It's 3 minutes
Good
past.
evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to the program this evening. It promises to be another exciting session as we speak with Professor Bolaji Akinyemi on various international issues across the world. Prof, thank you for joining us again this evening. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Uh, Last week, I complained that the world was too dull, too peaceful, and that our interaction was likely to be dull. Well, this week, I cannot make any such comment as there are fire points all around the four corners of the world. So, for the first time, I agree with you that it is going to be interesting.
Prof, it is always interesting. I think listening to you on any topic is always an interesting time. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Prof. Thank you so much. But I must say that we do start this evening on a somewhat sad note when we consider the death of Prince Philip in the United Kingdom. And Prof, the question to you, you have seen a lot of the work that Prince Philip has done. You have seen how he has been with the royal family. What kind of legacy do we expect from Prince Philip?
Well, he he was born a prince. He lived a prince, married a princess who became a queen, and died a prince. So, what do we expect in terms of the global attention that his death has commanded? And so I go back to Shakespeare, who said, when beggars die, no comets are seen, but the heavens themselves proclaim the death of princes. So we will expect that since he died, the airwaves had been filled with comments, tributes, eulogies, and what have you. Now, I come from a culture that says, speak no evil of the dead. And yet, at the same time, I'm a product of the Western culture. And here again, I must call upon William Shakespeare, British himself, who said, the evil that men do, live after them. The good is often interred with their bones. Of course, he was speaking about Julius Caesar. So here am I, caught in a conflict of two cultures, excuse me. And so I will try to do a balancing act. I will say that Prince Philip was a lucky man, because if you go back into the history of the world, I will just pick an artificial date. Congress of Vienna in 1815. And you tabulate the prince, the princesses, and the kings and queens who were an establishment in 1815 and who are no more now, believe me, tens, twenties, 100 of them have perished, whether in Europe or in Africa or in Asia. Royal families had perished. But he survived. He survived all the turbulence of European royalty. And as I said earlier, married his princess, who then became a queen. And he died a prince. So that's why I said he's a lucky man. A lot of tributes that have been paid had focused on the kind of support that he gave Her Majesty the Queen, head of Great Britain and head of the Commonwealth. And she herself had referred to him as a power behind the throne. So and that is deserved. When you regard the age at which Princess Elizabeth became Queen Elizabeth and had to carry upon her shoulder the burden of Great Britain, the burden of the colonial empire, and the burden of the Commonwealth. And if we take her word for it, then he does deserve to be praised for the strength that he gave her. I have a little bit of difficulty, of course, with his tendency for making unregarded and flippant comments about people of color, their culture, their dressing, and what have you. Now, the British press has tended to kind of write this off as, well, that's Prince Philip, not to be taken seriously on that issue. But if you're a person of color and you go through the history of the interaction of white people with the people of color, and up till now, people of color, what they are still subjected to all over the world, those kind of remarks are wounding. They're not pleasant. And I just think that he abused his status as the husband of the Queen, knowing that the subjects of his comments cannot speak back, cannot tell him. He wouldn't make this kind of comments about Jewish people, especially given the sensitivity of the Holocaust. So why did he feel that he could make this kind of comment about people of color, given the history of slavery, of Jim Crow, of lynching in the United States, and of racial discrimination which still exists till today? So while I extend my sympathy to Her Majesty the Queen as head of the Commonwealth and to the family, because he was still a family man. It didn't matter that he died at the age of 99. The sorrow will still be there, and I extend my sympathy towards them. But I don't think that I would have hurried off if I were living in Britain to lay bouquet of flowers either outside the Windsor Castle or outside the Buckingham Palace.
Um, Prof, one question on that point on Prince Philip before we move on from there. A lot of people have been turning their attention to the Queen, and the fact that one, they were so close, and number two, within 4 days now, she's returned to active royal duties, even before the funeral. How do you think the Queen is going to handle this whole challenge without Prince Philip?
Well, she's probably um, more strong than we give her credit for. I mean, after all, she's been at this for how many years now? Um, Definitely for decades. Uh, and the courtiers in the palace are there to help her out. Her eldest son, Prince Charles, is there to help her out. Not the same thing, of course, as having uh, someone you actually could confide in and speak plainly to about the challenges that a particular decision may bring forward. But Her Majesty has a lot of experience about these things, and I'm sure she would cope.
All right, Prof, there was one question from last week that we wanted to address at the beginning of this program, and that's the issue of the Myanmar ambassador in the United Kingdom who was locked out of the embassy. And there's been quite a bit of noise. How can this sort of thing be happening in modern society? The UK is a democracy and things like that. Um, what is your view on that situation, Prof?
Well, let's get certain things clear by international diplomatic law. The embassy belongs to Myanmar, even though it is located in London. And to that extent, I mean, short of committing murder, the Burmese can do anything they want inside that embassy. Uh, the only time when actually Britain has any control over who operates within that embassy will be at the very, very beginning when Burma is about to, or Myanmar is about to post an ambassador to London. And they have to ask for what diplomats call the agreement, which is, do you approve of this candidate we want to make our ambassador? At that point, Britain can say, no, we don't want him. It's allowed. And Burma will have to look for another candidate. But once they then say, we accept, then whatever happens within the embassy, amongst the embassy staff who are not British, is totally up to the up to the Burmese. Uh, and so people who come up with how come Britain will allow this to happen right in London, citadel of democracy. It shows that they are allowing the Burmese military regime to operate in Britain. Simply don't know their diplomatic law. If the military attaché receives instruction from the government in Myanmar to lock out the ambassador, he, he has the power to do so, and he has the right to do so. The ambassador can then ask either to return home or to go into exile, in which case it is then left to Britain to grant him exile status, or he goes back to Myanmar. But to think that Britain can insist that they will only treat with him as an ambassador, as I said, is not international diplomatic law. That Britain allows it to happen does not by any means show that Britain condones what the military attaché is doing, or condones what the military regime, the junta in Myanmar is doing. Not at all. I mean, the ambassador can stand on the steps of the embassy if he was on the side of the Myanmar's government and read a statement denouncing Britain. There's very little, Britain can do, because that embassy is regarded as the soil of Myanmar.
Thank you for that, Prof. Let's move to the major issue regarding Russia and Ukraine, and what we're starting to see in terms of the military buildup in that area. I think only last July or so there was a ceasefire there. But Prof, help us out on what's going on there. It seems that with every passing day, the buildup is increasing in that region. Are we going to see a war there?
Well, there is this proverb that when a hawk alights on a rope, both the hawk and the rope are going to be ill at ease. It's very interesting what is going on. Not necessarily between Russia and Ukraine, but between Russia and the United States. See, President Biden came in, there was a window of opportunity for peaceful relationship, the olive branch, when both agreed on continuation of the strategic arms limitation. And then Biden goes ahead and calls Putin a murderer. And Putin reacts. And then come now in position of forgotten what word we usually use, sanctions against Russia, against Russian government officials. So Putin then says, well, okay, fine. I will also ratchet up something to test the nerve of Biden, to move those troops into eastern Ukraine. And now more sanctions have been imposed based on what Russia had done in Crimea, in the United States itself, interference in the elections, the crack in computers being used by government agencies in the United States. So in a way, you keep getting a ratcheting up of tensions to test how far each party can go and to test who is going to blink first. Of course, more often than not, this is what leads to war if there is a miscalculation. I don't believe that Russia intends to go to war on Ukraine. A low intensity war has been going on now for how many years? I think since the time of Obama, is it, or is it the Bush the Junior? A low intensity war has been going on between Ukraine and Russia under Trump. That was ratcheted up a little bit by supply of weapons to Ukraine. Um, I don't believe that Biden wants a war on his hands within 100 days of his being sworn in as president. But I also don't believe that Biden intends his administration to be seen as a weak administration. So therefore, he also may feel he needs to take some carefully calibrated steps to send signals to Moscow that this is not on and that there is a danger it may go out of hand. So really, these are dangerous times in the relationship between the two, and also in the relationship between Russia and NATO, because if a hot war starts in Ukraine, how about relationship between all those other small countries that were part of the Soviet Union, but that had got their independence, Latvic countries? How far are they going to get involved, and how far will Putin be prepared to go? It's an area that the United Nations is going to probably pay more attention than they are paying, and perhaps seek to get involved. We may start to, or the Secretary General may start to think of peacekeeping operations in that area, to keep the United States and Russia from uh, getting involved in an escalated war that goes from cold, lukewarm to hot war.
Uh, Prof, one quick question here. Do you think that the NATO response to all of this is at the right level? Are they being too quiet and just trying to watch where things are going? Um, because it's we're hearing Germany responding, we're hearing some comments coming out from NATO, but maybe not as much as one would expect to hear. What do you think of that, Prof?
Well, NATO will not want to be ahead of the United States, uh, simply because of the decision-making process within NATO itself. And number two, NATO has its attention diverted to Afghanistan and the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan and what will follow, whatever concessions and with the Taliban, the Al Qaeda, and what have you, especially in the post um, troop withdrawal situation. So I wasn't expecting a forceful uh, statement from uh, um, from NATO until the United States shows how far up they are prepared to ratchet the relationship. A, a factor like the masquerade behind the fence in all of this also is the reaction by NATO towards the um, Russian dissident. Uh, the NATO has imposed some sanctions on Russia that Russia has felt, well, those sanctions were totally inappropriate. And yet you know that there are several cases that the Russian dissident faces. So calibrating what the appropriate response will be by NATO will have also to depend on whether they think they went too far in imposing sanctions because of the dissident, and what else would they be prepared to do if more cases are brought against this gentleman and is found guilty, which I would expect. So these are not easy times for diplomats, and as exciting as it may be for those of us who um, run commentaries and keep an eye on developments. The diplomats themselves who have to take decisions and who know that whatever they do or say may escalate situations. It cannot be easy times for them.
One point to bring up here, Prof, is the role of Turkey in all of this, because the Ukrainian president has been speaking to his Turkish counterpart and trying to get some support from that area. Um, can Turkey be of any help to Ukraine in this situation? Even if this were to escalate into a war, can Turkey help?
Well, Turkey might be emboldened by what happened in the Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenian conflict, where it trumped, pardon the pun, it trumped Russia and ensured the success of the Turkish-speaking party as against Armenia, who was an ally of Russia. So in this case, also Turkey may feel that speaking up on the part of Ukraine may call for caution on the part of Putin. Obviously, Turkey has been asserting itself. There's been, for the past how many years, even from the time of Obama, Turkey has been having a diplomatic renaissance. It's been asserting itself and it's been getting away with it. To the point now where there is some perception in international circles that Turkey is a major player in that area. So this may be what has led the president of Turkey to again try, I wouldn't regard it as a meddlesome position. Quite rightly, it may feel that Russia cannot be allowed to push people around in this area, and that therefore a word of caution from Turkey may have the desirable effect.
Prof, there are a few things I want to probe a little bit from what you said there. Turkey is having a sort of rebirth when it comes to diplomacy here. We're seeing Turkey holding peace talks with factions from Afghanistan. That used to be something that was, the US would usually lead in those sorts of conversations. Is it odd that Turkey is leading that? And is that the kind of renaissance you're talking about?
Yes, it is. Um, you see, Turkey is using its status as an Islamic power to intervene in situations where uh, Islamic factors are involved, or where Islamic parties, Islamic movements are involved. And the thinking, especially in Afghanistan, is that the parties, Taliban, Al Qaeda, uh, may be more prepared to listen to Turkey in the sense that coming from an Islamic power, their position may be more sympathetic and more understanding of positions of parties that are driven by an Islamic renaissance. It's not only Turkey that is a beneficiary of this Islamic Renaissance syndrome. This was just something also that was being pushed by ISIS and being pushed by all kinds of, Islamic movements. Of course, it does not mean that Turkey and ISIS are, reading from the same page. No, but in terms of the preparedness of the Taliban and Al Qaeda to, be engaged with Turkey and to give a respectful listening ear to what Turkey has to say. Um, uh, One can understand them where Turkey is coming from in getting itself engaged and involved in Afghanistan.
While we're still talking on these issues of the military buildup that's happening in Ukraine and Russia, we're also seeing another buildup in the South China area, and this is tensions between the U.S., Taiwan, and China. Um, After U.S. warship moved in the area, Taiwan was scrambling their jet. People Liberation Army were also scrambling their jets in the area to monitor what was going on. Do you see that escalating in that area, Prof?
Well, this is why my initial remarks were that while the world was getting cooler, not climatic wise, last week it was getting hotter this week, given how many trouble spots we have to keep an eye on. What to me seems to be happening is that the world order, which was put in place when the United States was the top dog in the world, uh, it was not even primus inter pares. It was, it had the final say. It was the most powerful, uh, not only economically, but militarily. And there was a world order in place that was acceptable to the United States. Now we are starting to see that world order challenged because of the diminishing power disparity between the United States on one hand, and in this particular case that you've raised, China on the other hand. Um, you will recall, that if I could just move your compass signal a little bit. You will recall that when Britain was handing over Hong Kong to China, this same China, it insisted on something which I'd never heard of in diplomacy. One country, two systems, or something like that, which meant, all right, China will have a different set of laws and Hong Kong will have a different set of laws. And even at that time, I said to myself, I was at Cambridge at that time, I said to myself, how can Britain enforce this if China decides somewhere along the line to make it two countries, one system, or at the end of the day, one country, just one country. Hong Kong is Chinese, Chinese is Hong Kong. What will Britain do? And I came to the conclusion at that time that apart from the noises that diplomats make, terms of communiques, condemnations, you may even get to Security Council, watered down, condemnatory resolution against China. There's very little that Britain can really do. So twist your compass back to the question of Taiwan that you asked. Taiwan is one of these post-World War II phenomenon where the defeated nationalist troops, defeated by the communists in mainland China, took off and ran to Taiwan to maintain their own system of government at that time. Now, did this make Taiwan a separate country? No. The original Taiwanese maintain that they are not Chinese, that they are a different people, and that Taiwan is a different country. But both the communist government in China and the nationalist government in Taiwan regarded Taiwan and China as one and the same. As long as the Communist Party under Mao Zedong at that time did not try to invade Taiwan, its status was left that nebulous. Neither chicken nor goat, neither Chinese or Taiwanese, and various understandings were put in place. Again, it was obvious to me that as the power gradation between the United States and China changed, there is going to be instability in the status of Taiwan. And that's what you are now getting. Again, I don't believe the Chinese want a war with the United States at this time over Taiwan. And I also don't believe that the Americans want a war over Taiwan at this time. I'm hoping that there will be no miscalculation. Post-World War II history is filled with, especially at one time, between the Soviet Union and United States, where bombers will come close to each other and, test the nerve of various pilots, flying those planes. One or two times mistakes were made, but usually those mistakes were regarded as not deliberate, that they were mistakes, and that therefore there was no need for any further reaction by either side. So I don't rule out this. I mean, human beings fly these planes. They are flown at supersonic speed. Mistakes can be made. Collision, that one shot down or that kind of thing. But I'm sure that the both parties would immediately reactivate this doctrine of mistake, not deliberateness in whatever action might have happened. And don't let us forget that at this same time we are talking about John Kerry, the environmental secretary
Secretary.
of the United States, is in China to see whether the United States and China will cooperate on, climate conditions, environmental conditions, whether they can persuade the president of China to attend the virtual summit that Biden wants to hold on environmental issues. So, that in other words, you are getting what diplomats often try to do: insulate a specific issue on which there may be agreement between the two parties from the general issues that are over which they cannot have an agreement at of this moment. So again, interesting times in the State Department, interesting times, in the Chinese Foreign Ministry for diplomats of both countries.
Um, Prof, let's move to the United States and end on the United States. One piece of information that President Biden has released recently is the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan. Now, this war we know has been going on for so long. And we know that Obama made a promise on withdrawing troops. Trump came in, tried to do the same thing. Now we're having President Biden making the promise. One, is it the right time for him to be making this promise? And two, why would he succeed where others failed?
Well, I believe that the Americans themselves are fed up with the Afghan war. That's the first thing. The second is that the present Afghan government, its elements, have behaved like spoiled children. I mean, America has spent $2 trillion in this, is it 10 years? 10 years war. They have lost over 2,000 soldiers. And yet all attempts by the United States to get the Afghan politicians to put in place a stable, unified vision of an Afghan system has failed, because as long as the Americans are there to watch the back of the Afghan politicians, well, they can just get on with the usual. If you know the values of the of the Afghan political system, you wouldn't want to get involved with it. And here the Americans have been 10 years. And as you yourself rightly said, Obama tried, Trump tried. Somebody has got to finally pull the curtains And I think if you do a public opinion poll in the United States, most Americans will support Biden on this. Now, there is always, of course, a danger in decision-making process that the factors you take into consideration today in making your decision 3 years down the road, those factors might even have changed so dramatically that people will feel you made a mistake when you took this decision. It has happened in it has happened in Iraq when Obama decided to pull out of Iraq, and ISIS then decided to go into Iraq, and Obama had to now send back the troops. People regard that as a mistake he made. I don't think he made a mistake. Circumstances simply changed, and circumstances can change in um, 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 in Afghanistan. If, for example, rather than the Taliban getting control of Afghanistan, the ISIS were to fight it out uh, with the Taliban and gain control of Taliban, that will be a different set of factors, because the ISIS and the United States still regard themselves as, in a belligerent state. So I believe that I believe that Biden is right. The United States should get out. It should leave the Afghan people and politicians to sort themselves out. There's no doubt to me, if you ask me to stick out my neck, there's no doubt to me that the Taliban is going to overrun Afghanistan, not next week, not next month. But look at what happened in Vietnam. People thought, oh, well, Kissinger was able to walk out a ceasefire in Vietnam and what have you. Yeah, the North Vietnamese allowed the American troops to leave, and months after that, they took over the entire country, and now they are behaving. In fact, I think Vietnam is the president of the Security Council for this month. Who would have believed this in the 60s or in the 70s? And this is the kind of thing that Turkey may be telling the Taliban. Learn a lesson from the Vietnam experiment. Take it easy. Let the Americans leave. Reach a modus vivendi with the present government, and then gradually, you're moving when the world has moved on to something else.
Hmm. Uh, Prof, just want to get your comments here. President Biden has just announced a series of sanctions against Russia, but it's addressing Russia for one meddling in the 2020 elections, for the cyber attack that happened a while back, and for its occupation of Crimea. Are these strong enough responses from the Biden administration to what's going on with Russia?
Well, yes, Russia is still not a walkover. Russia is still a nuclear power. Russia is still capable of inflicting unacceptable damages on the United States. The United States can definitely defeat Russia. Although what constitutes defeat in a nuclear war, I don't know. And that's why I put it that way, that even though the Americans could, could defeat Russia, Russia could inflict unacceptable damages on the United States that really there are no victors, no vanquished. The war will not be worth it. So to that extent, what you do when you have a confrontation between two nuclear powers, what you do just slaps on the wrist. First of all, to cover your back domestically, that you don't want to be accused of being soft on Russia, and number two, to let the Russians know that you don't approve of what they have just done, and that this may be the first step. I mean, that there are things on the oil sector that they could do. There are things that there are a million and one things that they could do, that the United States could do. But at the same time, Russia has the capability to retaliate. So when people, they always ask me that question, shouldn't the Americans do more? I always ask, like what? Like what should they do?
Hmm. Let me go back to Afghanistan. We still have about 5 minutes to go. Um, would you say that the Americans can claim that, yeah, we won that battle in Afghanistan? Because while they may have helped in, President Biden said once they dealt with Osama bin Laden, they had achieved their mission. But then we saw ISIS spring up in a whole lot of other places because Afghanistan probably became too hot for them. Now, would you say they can claim a victory?
Well, diplomats um, can claim victory and define it, that it will sound credible. What I understand Biden saying was that they went into Afghanistan to degrade the capability of Osama bin Laden, his movement, from launching the kind of attacks they launched 10 years ago on the United States, that they've degraded them to that level. And he admitted it as much. And therefore, he can declare that victory. He also said that the terrorists have moved on. They've regionalized their command. ISIS, even in North Africa, Boko Haram in Nigeria, that there are, Islamic West African Command, locate based, So really, you could then argue back that you haven't defeated the terrorists. You've just driven them out of Afghanistan and they've gone somewhere else. Well, okay, fine. Therefore, we are leaving Afghanistan and going after them wherever they have moved on to. So you could always define success in whatever way allows you to bring down the flag, take the salute, and go home.
Prof, we've got 2 minutes left on the program this evening, and I want to ask one last question. Um, Over the coming weeks, as this different issues around Afghanistan come up and they begin to withdraw troops, President Biden said the 1st of May they will begin to withdraw troops. Um, do you see that really happening within the timetable he stipulated? And if he doesn't achieve it, what impact will that have on his reputation?
No, there are 2,000 plus American troops. I assume actually that's American and NATO troops just 2,000 plus. It's not difficult to withdraw them. The issue is if the Taliban decides that since you didn't leave completely by May 1, which Trump promised them, they will start to attack coalition troops. And I think that will be very stupid of the Taliban because America then still has the capability to pound them back into submission. And that's why I made reference to the Vietnam example. I will expect that Turkey will be telling them, they said they are going, let them go. Don't use this opportunity of their disengagement to launch any major attacks on the coalition troops or even of the Afghan troops for that matter. Cool it. The time will be on your side. They said they are going, let them go.
Prof, thank you so much for that this evening. We have run out of time, but we will be back again next week as we start to address more international issues. Any final words from you, Prof, before we go?
Well, each time we finish, I always pray that there will be a next week and that some mad person somewhere will not have started something to create nightmare for all of us. So until next week, peace.
Thank you to our viewers. Bye for now.